Hi, everybody. It's me, TD Ashcraft, author of Bump the Monster, and I'm here today to answer some questions that we got from some of our fans, and just to kind of tell you a little bit more about myself. So let's get started. I kind of call myself a an accidental author. I never intended to be a writer, to be honest with you. Um, the first Bump story was written when I was in eighth grade. It was part of a homework assignment I had to do, just telling a story around Halloween time about what went bump at night. And Bump was kind of born. Um, I forgot all about him actually for a very long time. And then when I was in my 20s, um, a friend of mine kept asking me to tell them a bedtime story. It's kind of a joke. Every night before bed, they would ask me over the phone, "Tell me a bedtime story." And one day, I just happened to remember the story I had written in eighth grade, and so I told that story to the friend as a joke, and they loved it. And so I then went on to kind of share that story with my nieces and my nephews and some other friends of ours, and they all seemed to like it. So that's kind of how Bump was born. Um, at the time, I was working for a company that I had a lot of free time on my hands. I was working a late night shift, and one night when it was particularly slow, I decided to sit down and write another Bump adventure. And that is actually where the first Bump book came from, Bump the Monster. So, what you're reading when you read this book is kind of the late night imaginings of a bored employee based off of an eighth grade reading assignment. So, it's kind of an interesting way to fall into writing. Um, I started sharing that story with some friends and family, but I never really considered pursuing publishing. It was actually several years after I had written that my mom kind of urged me to look into getting published. And so I did, and here we are today. I loved to read when I was a kid. I guess more specifically, I loved it for my parents to read to me. Some of my favorite authors included, of course, Dr. Seuss, Mike Higgs, people like that. Actually, one of my prized possessions is a book that I used to make my grandma read to me every time I spent the night at her house. It's If I Ran the Zoo by Dr. Seuss. And a fun fact about this book right here is over 50 years old. This was actually given to my dad when he was a kid by his aunt and uncle. And then, I had my grandma read it to me all the time when I stayed there. And a few years ago, she went ahead and gifted it to me. So it's a proud possession that sits on my bookshelf now, and one that I enjoy sharing with my kids. So this was one of my favorites when I was a kid. I loved all the monsters and creatures and everything that Dr. Seuss made up and shared with everybody in here. Another one of my favorites was Dopey Dinosaur. This was an entire series of books. I think there was about a dozen of them, and my parents bought these for me when I was young, and I just thought they were really fun. They're little rhyming books that tell the adventures of this wacky little dinosaur, and I loved these. Fun fact about this: I thought for several years that I owned every one of these from my childhood, and then I found out through a surprise present from my wonderful wife that I was actually missing two of them. She had found them, searched online, found the last two that I was missing, and surprised me with them. So that was a really, really cool gift. Another book that I really loved as a kid and has kind of helped to inspire Bump the Monster, and another one that I was able to track down recently. This one was not mine from my childhood, but I was able to find it online. Mercer Mayer, or Meyer, I honestly don't know how to say that. The Little Monsters Bedtime Book. I believe this is the same person who wrote the Little Critter books and stuff like that, but you don't see a lot of the little monster stories. And these were a lot of fun. I really liked this one. I had my mom read it to me a whole lot. It was a really, really good time for me. I have already written over a dozen adventures for Bump. There's only three that have been completed with, editing and illustrations and everything like that. They're in the process right now of being reformatted. I'm excited for them to launch through Jump Splash here in the very near future. The first one is done, so that's very exciting. You can get that now. But the next two will be available hopefully within the next couple of months. So we're really excited about that. So, but yeah, over a dozen adventures are already written, and I'm excited to share those with everybody. There is a chance that I will write more books. I guess we kind of just has to wait and see how those first 12 go. If there are enough people who love them and would like to see more Adventures of Bump, then I'm absolutely willing to write some more. Fortunately, I have an amazing illustrator. His name is Daniel Roper. He's a professional illustrator. He works out of, I think he's in California. To be honest, it's one of those interesting relationships where we've never met in person. All of our interactions have been done online. And he just really gets the ideas. He's incredibly talented, and all I have to do is send him a story. He sends me back some draft pictures and some concept art, and then we kind of go from there. One of the really nice things about Daniel's work is it seems like he and I are almost on the exact same page all the time. I can give him a very brief, very generic description of a character, and it's like he can see the character in my mind. And he really just pulls it out of there, puts it on paper, and he's just is extremely talented. So I love his work. I allow him lots of liberties in the characters because it's so good. The third book that'll be coming out soon, Bump in the Family Tree, really gave Daniel an opportunity to get really creative with some monsters. All I knew in that book was that I wanted some of our main characters, but then a bunch of other monsters were going to be introduced. And I had no ideas of what I wanted them to look like. So I allowed him to just do what he does best. And I'm really, really excited about this book. I can't wait for you guys to see it. So that's a fun story. I actually met Chris first at a book signing. It was the Authors at the Loft event in 2016. Fun fact with that one, I almost didn't go to the event because it was just a couple of weeks after my baby girl was born, and I considered not going to the event so I could stay home with her. My wife really encouraged me to go ahead and go to the event, and that's where I met Chris. And so now here we are today. Imagine where I might be right now if I had not gone to that event. So I've only known Chris and Alex at this point just a little over a year. I actually met Alex. I guess I should back up there. I met Alex then several months later when they released their book, I Dreamed I Was a Reindeer. So I went to their book signing, also at the Book Loft. That's where I met Alex, and I had already known Chris then for several months. And it was only just a couple months after that that we really started talking about the idea of bringing Bump and all of his adventures over to Jump Splash Books. So really excited to have met them and really looking forward to continuing to work with them moving forward. Am I famous? No, I am not famous. Not at this point. I've had a couple interesting little experiences, I guess. My local bookstore knows me now. Whenever I walk in, they know me and what I've written, so that's kind of fun, I guess. But I can walk into any other bookstore anywhere, and no one's gonna even know my book, let alone who I am, in most cases. I did have a really cool experience, though. One of my favorite stories to share with people. I was out to eat one time at a restaurant over by Polaris Mall here in Columbus, Ohio. And I was sitting there with some friends. We were just having lunch one afternoon, and there was this younger family sitting a table or two over. I would guess the man and his wife were probably in their mid-20s, late 20s, I don't know, something like that. And they had a little girl with them, very young, probably less than 5 years old. And obviously she was a monster enthusiast. She had some crayons, and her dad was drawing on a piece of paper with her. And she says, Daddy, draw Sully from Monsters, Inc., in case you weren't sure. So he sits there and he's scribbling. And she's like, yay, Daddy. And then she says, Daddy, draw Mike Wazowski. And so he sits down and he starts drawing. And she's like, yay. And then she goes, Daddy, draw Bump. And he starts drawing. And of course, my ears perked up. And I waited for him to finish. And she's like, yay, Bump. And so I kind of leaned over. I was like, excuse me, I'm sorry. I don't mean to eavesdrop. But did she just say draw Bump? And he says, yeah, it's from one of her favorite books. We found it here locally, and it's this little monster, and you may not have heard of it, but my daughter really likes the book. I said, as a matter of fact, I have heard of it. Hi, I'm TD Ashcraft. And so that was really exciting. It was really fun to meet some people that like the books, and especially a little girl that loved the book so much, and put Bump right there in the same category as Sully and Mike Wazowski. So pretty exciting. It was a really fun time. Well, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, we are in the process right now of finishing up books 2 and 3. Hope to get those both out here within the next couple of months. Beyond that, then, it'll be time to start looking at book number 4, which I'm pretty excited about. And you might even see Bump appear in maybe a couple crossovers, or maybe make a little cameo in some other books. So we're pretty excited. Lots of fun things coming down the road for Bump. And we'll see. He could turn up just about anywhere. I'm not 100% sure yet. I know that sounds kind of funny. When I wrote Bump stories, they don't have to go in any particular order. Most of them, I guess. But right now, the one that my family is leaning toward being next is a fun book basically about Bump playing hide and seek. So I think that's what we're going to do next. It's definitely going to be in there somewhere, but we'll see. There's some other fun monsters we want to introduce. We want to let people start to get to know some of the other friends from Monsterland, and get to know them by name, not just Bump. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for watching my video. I love the questions. Keep them coming. Feel free to check out Bump on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. He's got a YouTube channel now. Stay tuned. All of those places should be starting to get a little bit more exciting. More content coming out, some pictures, introductions to some of the characters and things like that are on the way. Don't forget to check out Bump's website. If you haven't been there yet, just www.bumpthemonster.com. You can definitely check that out. And then, of course, watch for my books, Bump the Monster and the others. Should be available now through CreateSpace and Amazon. You can also find links to that through the Jump Splash website or through the Bump the Monster website. Should be able to see it on any of our social media as well. And watch out for us at some upcoming events. So we're going to be doing some signings and some appearances here in the Columbus area over the next few months. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be able to come to your city and meet you too. Okay? Thanks very much. See you guys soon. Bye.
I'm friends with the monster that's under my bed.